welcome to Creative Confidence. I'm Angela Nicholson and I'm the founder of SheClicks. And as usual, I'm joined today by Katie Teesdale Ward from Kudosity. Hi, Katie, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Ange. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you very much. It's really nice to see you.
Really nice to see you too. Hooray! I love Creative Confidence. It kicks the weekend off perfectly.
I love it too. And I think Friday lunchtime is the perfect time to have a chat about confidence. I hope everyone else is enjoying a sandwich. I was thinking about having one, but I thought you don't need to hear me eating a sandwich so close to a mic. So, Katie, today we are talking about dealing with rejection and building up resilience. Now, why did you think now was a particularly good time to be talking about that?
Well, we felt that with things now beginning to open up a little, it felt like the right time to be able to say people are feeling a lot more braver. People are feeling that they want to be outside more, that they want to be, going and visiting people and visiting friends, and also just everybody's been kind of cooped up in so many ways, both physically and also creatively, and just felt like now we needed perhaps a little bit more of a boost about being able to be brave enough to kind of be out there, whether that's physically out there, but also be braver in terms of if you're pitching for business, but also if you want to kind of kickstart your photography again. And part of that is, part of that bravery and part of that putting yourself out there is knowing how to handle resilience and how to build that up in yourself.
Yeah, because enthusiast photographers have been, okay, you could take photographs when you went out for your exercise, but you couldn't sort of say, right, this is the purpose of my exercise. You couldn't go out with a tripod and make that the main thing for your day. So a lot of us have been quite restricted in what we could do. And professionals have had to either kind of completely shelve their photography or find very new ways of working, perhaps remote portrait sessions. And now suddenly everything's back on again, or almost back on. We're not fully up to speed yet, are we? So it's kind of rediscovering what you used to do and whether that's still what you want to do or whether you want to branch out in another area. And I think that does bring a lot of uncertainty, doesn't it? And a kind of slight fear of, oh, is this the right thing? How do I go forward? And just, approaching new clients or approaching old clients all over again. And that kind of fear of rejection could be quite a significant issue, I think.
And also the fear of getting into your kit again. As from the very, very sort of basic level, it could have been sat, in your office, in your room, wherever, and it's rather than something that brought you a lot of joy and excitement and it really gave you energy, it's kind of been sat in the corner and it started to build up as this, oh, I wonder if I remember how to do that. Or maybe I did I enjoy it as much as I thought I did? Or perhaps I can't do the type of photography that I thought that I could. So it all comes in these extra layers of feeling, I'm not sure, the level of uncertainty. And we've been in this period of uncertainty for such a long time. It's been an unnatural period of time where we've gone from a kind of our lockdown worlds to things being open, and suddenly that's like, great, is it great? Great-ish, maybe not, I don't know. So it, and rejection is something that we have all experienced. The bitter cold sting of rejection feels really real, because we can all think back to times recently or further back where we've experienced rejection in personal life, professional life, both at the same times. It is a part of life, and we are hardwired from an evolutionary perspective to really worry about being rejected. It's part of kind of our evolutionary DNA. So we need to work out how we can really tackle that head on and make it something that we accept as part of our daily lives, daily, weekly, monthly, creatively, and how we get over that, and so that we're not fearful of it and it doesn't stop us from doing the things that we like to do and from growing. You know, it's really important that I think everybody wants to feel like they are growing, whether creatively or whether they are growing their client base or whether they are growing their kit so that they can try something new. And knowing how to overcome, you know, kind of overcome those feelings of internal rejection and external rejection is really important.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking back to a time when I felt rejected, and it was in connection with a job. I went for a job and I didn't get it. And the person gave me some feedback. And I remember the feedback was, well, we thought that the other person had more experience of organizing meetings. And I remember thinking, really? Organizing meetings? You mean emailing people and saying, can you be in this room at this time? You felt I wouldn't be able to do that. And initially I was kind of like, I was really stung by it. And given the other stuff that I was doing in the role I had at the time, I thought, well, that's ridiculous. And I was quite stung. And then I thought about it and I kind of analyzed it and I realized, well, if that's a key part of the job, that's probably not the right job for me. Yeah. And if that's how that job's seen, I don't want to be seen in that role either. So I think by kind of twisting it around and sort of saying, right, they're not rejecting me, they're just saying it's not the right pairing. And perhaps, you know, I need to see this job as not the right job for me not being right for that job, if you see what I mean. I think a friend of mine's looking at houses at the moment, and she messaged me saying, I've just looked at a house. It's not the right house for me. And you don't feel rejected by a house when you look at it.
Exactly. You know? Exactly. It's not the right personality fit. But, you know, but we do kind of associate all of those things with the different rejection. And the job one's a key, you know, we've all, well, I've experienced not getting the jobs totally. And I think everyone I know at some point has gone for a job and have not got it. Now that can be so many different reasons. And there are so many different variables as to why people don't get jobs. It's the rejection it's about understanding and understanding what's happened, being involved in it. So not thinking that it's happened to someone else. It's kind of being involved in it and then reframing it, taking that time to reframe exactly what happened, rather than just go, oh, well, you know, I never wanted the job in the first place and they don't know what they're missing. And, you know, all these they and we and me. It has to be kind of pause all of that for a bit, accept that being rejected from something sucks and it feels horrible because you've put yourself out there, and it feels personal because it is personal because it's you. You know, these things are happening to you, but rejection shouldn't define you at all. If, you know, if we felt like that for everybody that's written a successful book or tried, you know, music, or a painter, the first thing that they would have, you know, their first attempts or their 5th attempt or their 20th attempts may not have been the one that got them the success. But what people who are resilient have is that ability to reflect, to kind of absorb it and go, okay, I'm going to reframe this. What does the reframing look like? So that can be, for me, what I normally do is get a massive piece of paper and go, right, this is how I'm feeling about what has just happened now. It's not how I'm going to feel about it in a week's time. This is how I'm feeling about it now. And what are the kind of the variables or the attributes that are contributing to how I'm feeling about it? Now, take it for a job example. Why was I applying for that job? You know, was it something that I just did on the cuff? Was it something that I was really passionate about? Did I not prepare for the interview? Are they employing somebody internally? There is a whole massive piece of paper that you can fill in just with those top line questions. And then the next process is, right, okay, how can I change how I feel about these things? You know, because that's really important. Is how I'm feeling about what has happened helpful to me, or harmful?
Yeah.
If you apply that question to most things in life, when you get yourself in a bit of a thinking funk, it's really, really helpful. Is how I'm thinking about this now helpful to me or not? Because if it's not, then it's time to reframe it again. So resilience is, and people who are resilient and handle rejection well, doesn't mean that it doesn't sting. It doesn't mean that they don't feel the same ways that we do, because i.e. they're more successful or they are experts in their field or blah, blah, blah. It just means that they've kind of accepted that as part of daily life and are going to work with it rather than let it stop them from moving forward. So it's really, really important that you kind of take a bit of time for self-reflection after those kind of rejections.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good idea as well, you know, because you've got your list and you might sort of identify some questions that have come out of, you know, your feelings of rejection and, well, I don't feel that was fair or whatever, or maybe it was because of this or was it because of that? And maybe if you write those down and then you go out for a walk or, you know, you basically you kind of some of the emotion drains away, you feel a bit calmer. It is worth going back, particularly with jobs, I think, asking for a little bit of feedback and saying, you know, I'd just like to know what your reasons for the selection were. And because they might turn around and say, well, we didn't think you'd got enough experience in X. And you've got an option then. You may look at your CV or your application letters and think, oh, I didn't really stress that enough. Or you might think, well, that's a fair comment and I need to work on that area, but it can help you move forward and you feel like, okay, now I can make some progress.
It's you taking control of the situation rather than the situation controlling you.
Yes.
And it's very important, I feel, that when we're coming out of this period of lockdown, that you take all those elements where you can take control and kind of identify them, because we've been at sea with taking and feeling any sense of control with decisions and where we go and how we, you know, spend time and all of those things that I don't need to remind people about. But when you identify the areas that you can control, suddenly you feel better about yourself. You feel that you are in control of where you plant your thoughts and where you plant your aspirations and where you want to, you know, direct any aspect of your life. You don't feel that you are like a leaf blown around in the wind. So those kind of things are really important to kind of center you and to ground you. And we talked about the kind of the two separate there's kind of two different audiences that we look at for SheClicks, and it's kind of the professional photographers, and then there's the, you know, the amateurs and the enthusiasts photographers as well. And if we think about where we would apply resilience and handling rejections, I think for the professional arena, if you're looking to perhaps stage your first exhibition, for example, I think it's a really good idea to scope out those galleries, to look through the kind of work that they've had on at those galleries before, so that you get an idea of the kind of the themes that they like to have on show, the kind of work that they like to display, and take a genuine, and it should always be genuine, a genuine interest in the kind of thing that they're trying to attract people to. Because suddenly that idea that you've had of having a gallery exhibition, but if this gallery only focuses on black and white abstract architecture or whatever, and that is absolutely nothing that you shoot, then suddenly you need to rethink about, you know, if you were to just say, I'm really interested in holding my gallery at your space, what do you think? They are more than likely going to reject you on that basis. But because you haven't kind of done a little bit of research and taken a vested interest in kind of where you want to place your work. So I think it's always worth, wherever you are putting as a professional, you want to pitch yourself, do the research. And that could be if you want to be a Canberra ambassador, a manufacturer, you know, an ambassador for Canon, Nikon, whoever, whatever, find out the kind of work that they use, find out the kind of photographers that they work with. What is it that those photographers are doing that perhaps you do something similar, or you do something so different that can actually bridge where you think that they want to be. Find out the people who are the decision makers. Look at their social media feeds. Get a sort of a really immersed feeling for what these companies and where you want to be within it. Having an idea at the beginning, a kind of, you know, a nuclear idea of wanting to where you want to be, and then when you get all the different tabs attached to it, suddenly it can change where you want to be and what you want to be and where part of that where you fit within that organization. So that's kind of one example of sort of from a professional perspective. And certainly things like increasing your skill base. If you have over lockdown thought, do you know what, I really want to change my business, which has been predominantly weddings, and regardless of COVID, I now want to move into portraits or landscape, for example. It sounds like a really obvious thing to think, well, you need to reassess kind of, one, the reason why you want to do it, and two, think about what you need to learn. What do you need to do to get to that position? Because being a photographer and being brilliant in one specific field doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be transferable into something else. It might be, but put yourself in a position where you're likely to be successful. You know, give yourself those tools where you're most likely to get yeses, or at least start in a conversation with someone to get you there.
Really good points. And I think, like you said, all of these things kind of overflow into different areas. I mean, you were talking about galleries specifically, but the same sort of stuff applies to submitting to a magazine, doesn't it? And I think it's very easy to sort of see a gallery as just a gallery where they show pictures, but actually they specialize. And when you look at photographic magazines, yes, they cover a whole wide genre of photography, mostly, but they tend to have specific sections which focus on different things, different aspects of photography, or they need a story. So you need to kind of invest a little bit of time and making sure that you phrase your approach in a way that will fit and gel with what they're offering.
Yeah.
And similarly with competitions, you know, if it's a black and white competition, you wouldn't send in a color image.
Yeah, just to be crazy.
Different. Yeah, well, you know, the food photographer year, you wouldn't send in a picture of a building unless perhaps it was a kitchen or something like that, somewhere related. But you know, you apply some thought to that, and it works the same with galleries, essentially, doesn't it?
Exactly. It is about putting yourself in the best position possible where you're going to be successful, you know, where you're going to get a positive reaction. So we all know that rejection happens, and we all know that we experience it, and we know how that feels. So therefore, you would hope that by knowing that, it's finding out the things that you know and working on those so that you don't put yourself at any more risk than you're comfortable with. One of the things we talked about also is for a lot of people, it's not very comfortable, or it can be uncomfortable, to ask somebody in the street to take their picture. And that feel, you know, suddenly I can feel like, you know, getting a bit hot about this, you know, I'm not sure about if this is the right thing to do. How am I going to do this? Am I going to get, what's the kind of reaction going to be? But again, it's thinking about your approach to it. So it's not just shoving a camera in somebody's face. It is about saying, I really like, you know, rather than going straight in with that, I want to take your photo, please can I? It's, I really like your look, and I'm a photographer, and I would be really interested to include you as part of a work that I'm doing, which is in the community. People, let people be involved if that's going to make you feel much more comfortable, and certainly will make that person on the other end feel like they are actually, oh, okay, yeah, I understand what you're doing, and I would love to be involved, or I'm not comfortable being involved, and this is the reason why. So
Yeah.
you are in
Sorry,
a
go on.
totally different mindset. You're in a totally different position to had you been just taking a photo.
And some people are willing to engage in a conversation about the sort of image you're trying to create, because it might be actually that it's not so much them that you want in the picture, it's a person's silhouette or their feet or something like that. I remember one time I was near Edgware Road, and there's an amazing wall with all sorts of coloured tiles on it, and it just creates a beautiful backdrop. And I was shooting low level, and I was waiting for people to go by so I could get their photographs, and nobody came. And then I looked up, there was like a queue of people waiting very politely for me to stop taking photos so that they didn't interrupt my picture. I was like, oh, no, come on. And then so I kind of explained to a couple of people, would you mind walking through? I just want to get a shot of your feet going through or whatever. And they were delighted to do that. And I think it's the same, you can show someone, look, I've got this picture and it's not quite right, but I think if you stood there, if you've got a couple of minutes and did this, we'd get a great image, and I'll send it to you.
Yes,
And
exactly.
having something like, a card, it could just be with your email address or your website, or, just maybe your phone number, who knows, whatever you're prepared to let someone else see. You give them it. So if you drop me a line to that, I will email you the picture. Or another thing a friend of mine does, he has a little Instax printer that he
Yeah,
keeps in his pocket. He's a Fuji shooter. So he takes a photograph and he chats to the person for a few minutes, and he goes, oh, and there's your picture. And you
brilliant.
think, what a nice thing to do. So they're actually delighted because they're walking away with their picture.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good thing. But I think, again, you were talking about analyzing stuff earlier. I think it's a really good thing here when you're sort of thinking, oh, I want to ask someone if I can, if they're happy to be in my photograph. What is it you're worried about with the rejection?
Mm.
Because are you afraid that they're going to punch you?
Mm.
Probably not. But the thing is, you would probably stand an arm's length away anyway, and you're in a busy street, so you're probably going to be all right in that one. But just to analyze what it is and then think through how you would react if somebody asked you. And like you say, it comes down to the phrasing as well. But if somebody says no, that's fine. Maybe they're not feeling great that day or whatever, and just accept they're not rejecting you. They just don't want to be in a photograph that day.
Exactly. It's going up to a stranger and kind of pitching what it is that you want to do is in your mind as the photographer. You've been thinking about it all morning and possibly all week, because that's been, you've been planning your shoot and what you want to achieve and da 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 da. So you've played out 10 different scenarios before you've even put 1 foot of your on the concrete. That person who is sat on a bench, perhaps reading, perhaps, whatever it is, hasn't got a clue that you've thought about this for, the last week. As far as they know, they were just in their world and they're having this interaction. And it can be it can be a brilliant experience. So maximize and visualize what that good experience would be. And I think that Instax example is brilliant, because that means that somebody can go, that person who's had their picture taken will go back with that picture from the bank, go, you'll never guess what happened today. I was spotted, or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
it's part of that storytelling. And there is no guarantee that you will get a yes, but there is a guarantee that you will have the interaction and the bravery and the resilience to know that, do you know what, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to be I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm going to be the most opportunist to get a good result from this. And if it's
Yeah.
not, the world won't end.
No, it won't.
You won't end as a photographer. You will just go on to a different thing. It is
I
that.
just thought of another solution, if the printer, I think, is a great one, but most cameras have a Wi-Fi connection these days. So you could ping the picture to your phone,
Yeah.
and then you can ping it to their phone straight away.
Yeah.
Really simple.
Yeah.
That might be another solution, but I think the print is a bit special.
I think the print, it's kind of like somebody giving you a bunch of flowers for no reason, because like, oh, lovely, you know, there's no, it doesn't matter if they never see where you put that picture in, whether in print or whatever, you know, you've had that human interaction, that human connection, and who knows where that will go, what that will spark. That who knows if that person that you has been on their own, you're the first interaction that they haven't seen for, you know, there are a whole load of Richard Curtis different type of endings that could happen there. But it is, as photographers, as creatives, as human beings, we like and long for connection. Yes. And make those connections as positive as you can, and there will always be rejection. There will always be times when you don't hit a home run. That is part of human connection too, and it's about the, you know, the learning and putting yourself in a positive position. And one of the things that we identified as well was kind of, if perhaps you're new to taking or wanting to take more sort of street portrait photography, or kind of that kind of photography, there are things that will be opening up, such as, you know, the cosplay, the what is the thing at Whitby with like the goths at Whitby?
Goths.
Yeah, there are these things that will be happening throughout the UK, and I know that you've got a global audience, so there will be things that will be going on as kind of convention-y type things. These people are dressing up and are, you know, their whole purpose of what they do, of what they love to do, is to be photographed. It's to be, you know, kind of to be seen and to be recognized as be seen. So the likelihood that you can go up to one of those and say, I really love your, you know, She-Ra, whatever, costume, and I would love to take you because I'm doing a project about cosplay and da 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 da. Are you happy with that? You'll probably get 20 different people all in a queue waiting to be shot. And that will be amazing, because suddenly you've got so much confidence from going to something that you probably might not have done before, to you're speaking to people. It's opening up how you communicate and the interactions that you have, and you're getting repeated yeses. So you're kind of, in your head, you are logging, oh yeah, okay, that's fine, you know, and you'll get a few no's, and
it works.
the majority of people will be yeses.
Yeah, and the more you build up the yeses, the less significant the no's become. And I think you don't have to have a sort of, oh, I'm doing a project and I'm putting on an exhibition and I want you to be in it type story. It could just be, I've never been here before and I'm just loving the vibe. I really like your look. Would you mind if I take a photograph? I'll probably put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
Something like that. You know, just be honest and yourself, and try and, like you were saying before, you know, it's about forming a connection with somebody. And I think actually, you know what, we've all been stuck in our own homes for so long that we're desperate to have connections with people and have conversations where their lips are in sync and they can, you know, you can have 3 conversations going on at the same time. People love it. So, you know, it's great. And last night I went and photographed some rugby. I photographed it the first time I photographed rugby in ages, because it's not been going on. And it was just so nice, and they were so welcoming. You can come again, do come next time, blah blah blah. And it's just a really nice experience. And you know, who doesn't want a photograph of themselves doing the sport that they love, whatever it is? It might be cycling, it might be football or rugby or hockey or whatever. But if you contact a club and say, could I come along? I'm an amateur photographer, I'm an enthusiast photographer, I'm a professional, I'm trying to hone my skills at XYZ. Could I come along and take some photographs? I'm happy for you to have some if you'd like them. I'll just make, you know, I'll just photograph the adults. I won't be photographing the kids clubs or anything like that. 9 times out of 10, they say, oh yes, great.
Yeah. And what is interesting is that sometimes people will say, oh, well, well, it's okay for you because you're confident. I'm not confident. I'm an introvert. I don't feel comfortable doing, you're fine because you can go up to people and just let's work out a way to kind of reframe that.
Yeah, get your
Confidence
in.
confidence is for everyone. It's not for
Yeah.
extroverts, it's not for introverts, it's for everyone. And how I would approach someone would be different to how somebody else would approach, would be different to somebody else, would be this is, creative confidence is about confidence in every single way that we can get people, creatives, members of SheClicks, to do and feel empowered to do the photography and the hobby that they love, that energizes them, that gives them joy. Seeing other photographers work gives them joy. People who post photos within SheClicks, there is an element that people are overcoming that level of rejection because they're putting their photos out for people to see.
Yes.
And isn't that wonderful? And that will encourage somebody else to do it. And that will encourage. So the more examples we show where actually, but moving forward with photography and moving forward as a creative and as a human, if we show that that's okay to make mistakes, to not have it perfect, to not wait for perfect, and rejection is part of that, then hurrah, everybody will just take the pressure off and start doing more of what they love. The other side of it is when you've had a level of success, and that can be, how people interpret their own levels of success is down to them, or it can be very public. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're just going to not experience rejection straight out, on their next project, or on their next project two more down the line.
Yeah.
Rejection can happen at any point, regardless of if you have a massive track record of success.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. I mean, you only tend to read the books that were written by the successful authors, and after they were successful, you don't see the 10 novels that they put together that just ended up in the bin. You only see the ones that get published. And similarly, photographers who have exhibitions, they have taken other photographs. You can guarantee that is not the first photograph they took, and somebody said, that's brilliant, let's put on an exhibition. It doesn't work like that. We all know that. But it's just sometimes good to remember it. I think, we talk about often with professional photographers, they really, really understand how to edit their work. And by that, I mean, select the images that they show people rather than, using Photoshop. So they show people the best work. And what professional photographers become very good at is understanding what a good photograph is and then showing it to people. And that's part of the learning process. As an enthusiast, you start off and you're really happy, particularly in the early days, you're really happy that you've got a sharp image, and then you're really happy that you've got the depth of field that you want, and gradually you start to learn more and more, and you get more sophisticated, and you're happier and happier with your work. But sort of being able to sort of say, well, why one image is better than the next one, and then showing people that sort of work. So what I'm trying to say is, it's just, don't assume that everybody just suddenly got successful. You have to work at it.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is, really famous, well-known photographers, they're famous really because you see the same 5 shots possibly over and over again globally. They will, like you said, that there will be a back catalogue of images that have not been shared or that aren't shared as publicly, but that doesn't stop them from from building on that success of those and being able to use those 5 shots as the tools to do their next speaking gig or to have an exhibition or whatever it is. So it is seeing it in, being able to stand back and see it for what it is. It's not the be all, it's not the end all. And resilience, massive part of that is being able to get that, I think that is one of the hardest things to kind of get your head round first. It's kind of, how can I reframe this in a really healthy way so that I am not carrying this around with me? You know, focus on the good again. Focus on the things that you can take control of and where you are at this point now. Don't hark back to the time that you took a photograph, you know, 15 years ago, when you borrowed somebody else's camera and you got rejected from it. You know, it's very different, a different kettle of fish.
Yeah. And we put rejection and resilience together because, you know, sort of experiencing and getting through rejection just helps you build your resilience. But I think also after a while you stop seeing it so much as, or, you know, small rejections, you stop seeing them as rejections, and it kind of switches in your head.
Yeah.
So you just become that little bit more confident. But as Katie, as you said earlier about, you know, it's for extroverts and introverts, I think people need to find their way of getting their into situations. So, you know, if actually you're the sort of person who's quite happy to walk up to a complete stranger holding out a freshly sanitized hand to shake and say, hi, my name's so-and-so and I would really like to do this, fine, that's great. But if you're not that sort of person, then think about what your approach is. Would you prefer to phone them? Well, you know, that's slightly less pressure than face to face, but maybe an email would be good. And, you know, just put a little bit of time into phrasing that email so you come across as approachable and friendly and all that sort of stuff, and then fire off an email. And if they come back, or if they don't reply, they haven't replied, but could have gone in their spam box, so it might be worth following up. But if they come back and say no, thank you very much, just chalk it up. If they come back and say yes, then you've got your next step, and you know, you've got, you go and you go over to the person who said do come along, you know, go over to them and say thanks very much, or, you know, I'm really pleased to be here, it's great taking these photos, so thank you. Chances are they'll turn around and say, we've got another game on Saturday if you want to come along.
Yeah.
You know, it's just starting the dialogue, getting going.
Exactly. And it isn't that, you know, there isn't a one technique for extroverts, a one technique for introverts. Follow that path. Everybody is individual, obviously, and you know, be authentic is what I'm trying to say in a very, how many words can I use? Because you've got to be comfortable with what you're doing and how you're pitching yourself and how you're phrasing it yourself, because you don't want to suddenly catch yourself out further down the line when you know, tripping yourself up over language that you wouldn't use, or the way in which you present your work in a different way. Just be authentic, be engaged, be open to a yes and a no equally, but make sure that you position yourself so that it is easier to say yes. Yeah. And also make sure before, right at the get-go, that you are clear about what it is that you want to achieve, so that when they come back and say yes, you don't then have to go back and forth and can we do it like this, and it's clear.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of really interesting questions, which I think will be good to turn to. So someone has asked, is there anything you can offer to help with self-sabotage halfway through a session? You start off feeling confident, but then make a mistake and you can feel the confidence draining away. The voice inside says, oh, maybe I can't do this after all. And I think, you know, we've all been there at some point. And I think particularly if, when you're talking about a session, it sounds like perhaps it's a portrait session or something like that, when somebody else is there, and that's what puts the pressure on. I think preparation is key. So do what you want to do when it's just you. You know, maybe you've got a football on a stand or something that's standing in for the person, and you practice those things, or get a friend or a partner along, a dog, whatever you've got access to, and do that shoot with them. So it's about building up your confidence with what you want to do. Also, you know, maybe if you've got someone along, you're photographing them and you suddenly become really inspired and you hadn't thought about it, so you want to try something, have a laugh,
Mm.
because I think this is part of photography. You should be enjoying it, and your client or your subject should enjoy it as well, hopefully. But if you say to them, look, I'm just going to try this, I don't know if it's going to work or not. If you say, I think I need to work on that a bit more, don't say, oh no, it's a disaster, nothing else, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Just to say, well, I think I'm gonna have to work on something, or just go back to the basics and just do what you can do, so you're sort of building yourself up for success. So I hope that helps. Do you have anything to add to that, Katie?
I think it's a really good question, and I think it's something that we can all relate to, because I've been certainly in a situation where you feel it's going great, everything's cool, oh my gosh, what's that? Everything's gone a bit, skew with, oh my goodness, this looks like it's going to go into a disaster. I'm exposed. This is all kind of going off the rails. We've all experienced that. What's interesting is to kind of the terminology, and to label it with the self-sabotage. I'm always really, really mindful about words, and words that we say to everybody else, but words that we say to each other. So if you're going into a shoot and thinking, I'm feeling all right, I know it's going to start well, but potentially I am going to make sure that this isn't great. I am going to actually make sure that self-sabotage happens, because it's right there in my, it's right there at my front and center. So be mindful of the language that you use to yourself on a daily basis anyway. So that's kind of one bit that I would be mindful of. Being confident and being terrified, the kind of, sometimes when you're in a shoot and it's high pressure, or you feel that pressure yourself, what it actually is loads of adrenaline rushing through your body. And there is a very, adrenaline, fight and flight, work together very, very closely. So if you can say to yourself, do you know what? I'm going to reframe how this is feeling to me right now. I'm confident at the beginning, so I know that I can bring this back, because I've demonstrated to myself I know what I'm doing. It's going off the rails. I'm going to take a beat and just say, okay, now obviously it's hard to explain what would be in this particular situation, but for example, if you're in a shoot, we're in front of a client, they are employing you as a professional photographer. You're in charge of that shoot. You're being paid to do a job. They have confidence in you to do the job. If you need to take a beat to get yourself back on track, do it. Take control of what's happening and the situation around you. But self-sabotage, if you think it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about taking pause. And it might be because you specifically mentioned in this question about making a mistake and then your confidence drains away. You don't want to finish at that point. You want to get back on. You want to reset and do, end on a high. So go back, as I say, to the starting point that you were doing well. Maybe, when I used to do a lot of running, they talk about having your power song, you put your song on, and it's just when everything's flagging, you put this song on and it lifts you up. Maybe have a song, and you turn to your client and say, should we have some music? And you just pop that on. Or maybe you say, would you like a coffee? Let's have a coffee and a little break. We'll have a look at what we're doing, and then we'll do some more if you've got time. But just think about these little things that you can stop, reset, and off you go.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have another question, which is, do we have any pointers for approaching people in a way where they don't think you're creepy or trying to chat them up? Well, I think the thing is that what you have to remember is some people, their version of friendly and approachable is somebody else's a bit too friendly and too approachable. And it's a very personal thing. It could literally be they're not having a great day and they're kind of, what's this person? They weren't really listening. But I think just trying to be yourself and sort of explain what you're doing clearly and why you'd like them to be in your photograph, and just be as honest as you can, really.
Yeah, and just be, people are very aware of boundaries anyway. So if you feel like if somebody were to say the same things that you were saying to this potential person, you know, you have more confidence in yourself to know that you wouldn't be creepy and you're not chatting them up, unless you are chatting them up. But it's about just, you know, understand that you wouldn't put yourself in a situation where you wanted to be seen as creepy or seen as inappropriate. So, you know, trust your instinct. You know what and how things can be interpreted.
Yeah. You just for some reason reminded me, I was at in London at near Borough Market one time. There was a guy, there's lots of people go there for their lunch, or they certainly used to, and he was sitting in a doorway on the doorstep just eating his lunch, and it's beautiful sunshine, and there was sort of just I think it was cobble street, and it was quite an interesting view. And I said to him, would you mind if I took your photograph while you just sit there and eat your sandwich? And he said, no, go on then, go for it. And I took a few photos and I showed him the picture, and he said, oh, thanks, you've made my day. And that was it, you know. And it was just, he felt good and I felt good, and it was just a really nice kind of thing. And then usually someone says, so why are you taking photos? And you say, well, I'm testing this camera, or I just like taking photos in this area. And I think that can help, actually. If somebody sees you often in the same place, then they kind of get to know, oh, there's that woman who likes to take photos here. So just a few thoughts. And we have another question, which I think is a really good one. Some really nice comments about enjoying this. That's great. But the question is how to encourage new members of camera clubs to not be put off by some of the judges' comments that they may experience, because sometimes, you know, they get a lot of technical advice, and you know, you can forget about the emotion and the intention of the photographer's work. So, and we did sort of talk about judging and the experience of being a judge as well as being judged. And I think obviously it's a little bit harder when a lot of the camera club sessions are now remote. So whereas before, you know, you might have the judging and then people break, or a bit of judging, you break for a coffee or before everybody goes home. You know, I think that's an opportunity when someone who's an experienced club member could go over and say, you know, you are doing really well, don't be put off. They are trying to help you, and it might have sounded a bit harsh, but they're trying to put you in the right direction. And actually, I think you did XYZ really well. Now, obviously, when everything's on Zoom, that's a bit trickier, but you know, there's the messenger boxes, and usually you can specify that you're going to talk to an individual. So you could just drop them a line and say, don't worry, you are doing really well, just to kind of help them tick over and to help them see it in context, I think.
Also, I think that it would be interesting to have a conversation with the camera club right before you submit any competition entries or any photographs, and say, you know, what is the sort of thing that you're looking for? How do you give feedback? How do you give, you know, what's the best route for me to take? Because I'm really interested in the camera club and what you do in the community and all of those things. And I want to progress as a photographer. And I understand part of that progression is taking on feedback from competition, you know, submissions. But I'm mindful about putting myself in a position where I can learn the most from it. So part of that will be, you know, a percentage of technical information, or it will be about composition, or can you kind of explain to me how the process works and what you're looking for, and whether, you know, it's about, again, we're talking about kind of putting yourself in a position of success, or a position of least rejection, I suppose. But with rejection and with building resilience, the key is to not let it stop you, you know. And as a photographer, what is important is that you grow, is that if you never experience rejection, if you never have a competition entry submitted, then that's not helping you grow if that's the way that you want to go. So I would kind of try and see it as a collective thing, rather than just if I enter a competition, or if I enter, sorry, the camera club, and the feedback isn't great, what do I do? Because you're coming at it from a position of, I'm going to enter, I'm going to get rejected, how do I manage how that feels?
That's great. And someone has just commented that don't forget that a judge's opinion is only one person's view, and on that particular night. And actually, that's something I was thinking about, because I've never been a camera club judge, but I've been a judge on some competitions, and it's a really enjoyable process. But it's also a certain amount of pressure, and somebody shows you a picture and then says, "What do you think of that?" And you've got to come up with something. You can't just say nothing, or I like it, or I don't like it. You have to come up with something, and it can be really tricky. And often people have got a certain number of stock phrases that they can't get away from, and they will just shoehorn your picture into that one and just sort of say, oh, it's very X, Y, and Z. So I think just remember that it is the judge's opinion, but also they are only human, and they are under a lot of pressure, and they're trying to come up with something helpful to say, and they might not be the best person sometimes at expressing it correctly, but that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And it's growing as a photographer is trying new stuff. Doesn't necessarily mean entering the competition, but if you want to enter a competition or submit photos into a camera club, then just do it.
Yes, just go for it.
Just go for it, because until you do it, you'll always be thinking, I wish I could do that. Well, just do it. You're a photographer, you're engaged, it's something that you love. You're part of a club, and being part of a club and being part of a community is support. Otherwise, it's just an outward community, it's just a communication outward. Being a club, a community, SheClicks is a perfect example of that. It's community. It's not telling, it's helping, it's developing, it's coaching.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. And I think, as somebody's kind of alluded to in the chat box, there's always a judge or two who is known for not liking a specific thing. I remember seeing a competition, someone says, I don't like flowers. You think, well, that's a helpful comment, but they're just known for not necessarily being that kind. And that is really when the rest of the club needs to rally around and just say, don't worry, they're always a bit like that. It's like that teacher you had at school that always gave you a C when you really felt you probably should have got a B or whatever. It's just a bit of a funny one. So bear that in mind. And we have another really interesting comment, which someone was saying that we were talking about, taking a pause when you feel things going wrong. She was tried being an interior house photographer for a while on a refurbished house, and she started to get quite flustered. So to distract herself, she went and had a conversation, a bit of a chat with the person who was there, just calm herself down, and gave herself a little pep talk. And then she realized the pressure was all within herself and got on with the job. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's really good. So Katie, I think we've come to the end of the questions. It's probably time to round up. Do you think you could kind of give your 3 top tips for dealing with rejection and building resilience?
So, well, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, first of all. I think it's been brilliant, and I've loved all the questions too. So thank you for those. I don't see them pop up, by the way, so I'm hearing first time. So I think the first thing is to understand that rejection is universally experienced by everyone at every point in time. There isn't one person on this planet who hasn't dealt with some level of rejection or had to dig deep into their resilience reserves. So be comforted in knowing that even those top high-flying, multi-millionaire photographers or global influencers, or whoever or wherever you get your inspiration from, will have had a back catalogue of failure to get to where they are now. That is a fact. So reframe your way of thinking about where people are in terms of kind of their success. When you're managing a rejection, see it as where you are now. So kind of focus on how that feels at that point in time. So take a pause. For me, I use a big piece of paper and I go, right, okay, what is it that's happening now? Don't try and think about it retrospectively, because you'll put all sorts of bells and whistles on it. Think about it now. And then see it, you know, try to reframe what you're actually reading in black and white, because that's really important. And then focus where your attention is being sent to. So if you're constantly focusing and reframing what's gone on before in the past, that's all you will remember. That's all you will focus on. So focus on the now, focus on the potential for moving forward. And then the last really, really important thing, which is not just for resilience but kind of a whole sweeping thing, is consider, is the way I'm thinking about this helpful or not? Is it helpful or harmful? Because if it's helpful, then it can be used to help you grow. If it's harmful, then start to reframe it in a different way. But everybody deals with rejection. Build up your resilience and don't let it stop you moving forward.
Thank you. Very succinct, I think. So the next Creative Confidence will be on Friday, the 4th of June at 1 p.m. And Katie and I will be joined by Carolyn Mendelsohn, and she's going to be talking about her approach to confidence. Now, if Carolyn's name seems familiar, it's probably because she's currently featured on the BBC News website, because her Being in Between exhibition is on in Bradford. And she's been talking to people on the TV about it. So if you live in the Bradford area, you have the opportunity to see her exhibition at the Impressions Gallery, and it's on until the 24th of July. But please come and join us on the 4th of June, because Carolyn is great fun and I'm sure she'll have a lot to say, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with her. So thank you very much for today, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.